Right now at 6, for the third time, the fate of Antonio A.J. Armstrong Jr. is now in the hands of a jury. He is charged with the murders of his parents, Don and Antonio Armstrong Sr. They were shot while sleeping in bed early on a July morning of 2016. Today, for the first time since the third trial started, we had a camera inside the courtroom for closing arguments.
How many of you, when you were 16 years old, took a gun from your parents' room, fired it through the floor of your own house, and then your parents died right after that by the exact same gun?
As you judge the evidence that they talk to you about, it includes the alarm records, it includes the medical records. What else is out there? That cross-contamination is enough for reasonable doubt to acquit this young man.
Yes, the Antonio Armstrong Jr. case is now in the hands of jurors, but there still continues to be new developments. Within the first couple of hours of deliberating, jurors have asked to review some of the evidence used in the trial.
And first on 2, Armstrong filed a federal civil rights lawsuit centered on one piece of evidence from the trial. Let's get outside to the Harris County Criminal Justice Center for the bench.
Good evening from sweltering downtown Houston. It is literally over 100 degrees where we sit right now, but no matter, we have a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to do it. A lot has happened in the A.J. Armstrong murder trial number 3 today, including just a few hours ago, it has now been put in the hands of the jury. But even post that, after that point, some breaking news. A federal lawsuit filed that makes some serious allegations against the city of Houston, against HPD, essentially. Yes. What does it say?
Yeah, AJ files a lawsuit against the city of Houston here. He's alleging that the city is violating his 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendment, constitutional amendments. And this all goes back to the sticker, the name tag, and the blood specs. There are 3 HPD officers named in this lawsuit. Right. It is Maldonado, Dodson, and Weber. But what I found interesting was Dagnalds, who's the lead homicide investigator, wasn't named in this, but it's saying that all those 3 testified in previous trials that there was no blood on AJ the night of while they interviewed him. And this is just something that didn't expect to happen.
A quick scene setter with all this, because before this third trial even started, there was not even a whisper of any blood evidence. And then what was it? It was literally the eve before this trial, this third trial was supposed to start. Suddenly, there is a speck of blood or some sort of DNA material that is found in the underside of an HPD name tag. Correct. And it was suspicious, at least curious.
Absolutely. Because remember, those 3 witnesses that were actually named in the lawsuit, each testified that they saw no blood on A.J. Armstrong. In addition to that, even the folks who examined the evidence, the forensic people, actually stated they saw no blood on A.J. Armstrong when they did a very thorough investigation on this case. And so all of a sudden, when an out-of-town investigator, the renowned Rossi,
put that way, yeah.
Yes, the renowned Rossi
build that way, yeah.
into the actual property room, and all of a sudden she finds this speck of evidence. And I think that what was most telling, or what the defense had the major problem with, was that after all this time, the speck of blood was found, and that they admitted that it could have been cross-contamination, that they sponsored it anyway, and that they acted as though it actually happened from that night. And so that is what I think the defense took problems with. And if you remember, in that lawsuit, they actually state of the other times that HPD has found to have planted evidence on other people.
Referencing something that happened in 1988, I believe.
1977, 2000, and then, of course, that Goins fiasco, right, where there was this fake search warrant that was made, and 2 people were actually killed as a result of HPD's false allegations.
What about the timing, though, of the filing of this? Did he wait specifically until the jury had gone back and started deliberating? Why file it right this second?
I guess that's something we'll have to just wait and ask them once this is all done, because
it's got to be strategic, though, right?
I think the lawyers who filed the lawsuit strategically did that. But remember, the jurors now are sequestered, or should be, and so they won't have access to the media or anything that's going on, so they may not be able to see this stuff.
And Jason, our producer, just handed me, I think it's your phone, right? And you got it. It's breaking news. It really is. The jury apparently has just rung the bell, meaning they're wanting something or they're asking something, and they want speakers apparently to listen to some of the audio. Could that be a 911 call?
Possibly. The 911 call, the interview with him.
His audio. They're going to want to hear what he has to say. They're going to examine that. He is going to be the one out of all the witnesses. He will be the witness they will pay attention to most. Remember, I told you he didn't need to testify. He already testified. They audio recorded him when he gave a statement that night. Right. And on that night, he told what he believed to have happened that night. So he's technically already testified. So he is the most important witness in this case, and I bet you they want to hear what he had to say again.
How long do we have? I mean, before we get into the sort of crux of what they talked about in closing arguments, and we'll sort of pick that apart a little bit, do we know how long they're going to go, like tonight, or if they're going into tomorrow? Do they go all night? Do they have a cutoff?
From what I'm heard today, they will have a cutoff to about 7 o'clock. Okay. Because remember, this is just the first night, and while they remain here, so do the attorneys and all the other people involved in all this, just waiting around. I'm being told that they have until 7 tonight, and then tomorrow, I believe around 8:30 they'll return.
We are talking about a sequestered jury right now, right? So from here, they're really, are they up there on the 18th, 19th floor?
They are 19th floor.
19th floor, and they're sort of all huddled together. It's just the petit jurors, meaning the main jurors, and not the alternates, correct?
Correct. The alternate jurors are not in the deliberation room, although they do have to hang around, but they're going to be somewhere else, because God forbid one of those jurors who are on the petit jury gets ill or for whatever reason cannot continue on with the deliberations, then that alternate juror will take that juror's place and potentially have to start all over again with deliberating through the evidence.
And so this evening, I guess it's 7 o'clock if they haven't wrapped up, which, well, we don't want to speculate, but if they haven't wrapped up by 7 o'clock, so then they eat and then they go to a hotel?
I'm not sure if they're going to eat at the hotel or eat here, but they will go to a hotel, they will be sequestered, and they will not have access to media of any sort, because they just want to protect the integrity of, the deliberations.
Yeah, more important during this stage than any other. Of course, the judge has been clear about what the jurors should and shouldn't do during their off time. Let's get into a little bit, if we can, the closing arguments, which happened this morning over the course of a couple of hours. We went back and forth between prosecution and defense. We heard from 2 members of the prosecution team, the state's team, and 2 members of the defense team. And I'm interested to see what you guys thought, sort of, who do you think, and I know this is an on-the-spot question, who do you think, which side performed better?
Now, of course, everyone is going to say that I'm a defense attorney, and I'm going to say that, but I am going to be particular about who I'm talking about and who I felt like did the best. Now, I will say this, I was very impressed with Ryan Trask. He really brought the thunder. However, when Rick DeToto got up, he captured me. And I am very difficult to impress when it comes to closing arguments.
Really? Yeah.
But Rick connected with that jury. He was comfortable in that courtroom. He sat in the witness stand and acted as if he was those witnesses that testified and told the jurors why he had a problem with what they said. And he had a theme. And the theme was that this investigation was reckless, it was dangerous, and it was desperate.
They want me to go right now to prove what you're saying and to see if the audience agrees. Let's hear from Rick DeToto. This was this morning during closing arguments.
I'm not going to patronize you and tell you thank you. I'm going to tell you that I admire you. I admire what you can do in this case. I admire the decision you're about to make. You have the ability to stop this madness. You have the ability to say enough is enough and let this young man get back to his life. and you go back there, there's reasonable doubt all the way through this case from beginning to end. Find A.J. Armstrong not guilty.
Rick DeToto there with a portion of his closing arguments. We're going to take a brief break and come back with the bench right after this. Welcome back to KPRC 2 News at 6. Joel, Letitia, Rilwan, this is the bench, and we are discussing A.J. Armstrong's third murder trial. It has been 7 years since the crime was committed in 2016. 2 hung juries preceding what is now in the hands of a third jury.
Correct.
And we are talking about closing arguments. Just before we went to break, we were talking about Rick DeToto. I think we were of the mind that he did a pretty solid job.
He did an amazing job. And I think, you know, one always says that you can't win a trial with a closing argument. But the way that Rick just poked holes in their evidence and the way that he talked about how the evidence and the history of the evidence was not treated properly, and that all of a sudden this DNA shows up and they're willing to sponsor this evidence. Right. And then they go on to say this is how people are wrongfully convicted. But I don't want to be one-sided.
Right. So in that interest, of course, we don't want to be one-sided, and different people have different opinions. And I actually thought John Jordan, lead prosecutor, was very effective as well.
Well, I thought Ryan was very effective.
Did you think Ryan was better
really
than John?
did, and I'm going to tell you why. Because Ryan made a statement that I think kind of dispelled some of the defenses.
Also on the prosecution team.
Also, Ryan's on the prosecution side. And he said a normal kid does not take a gun and shoot it through the floor.
Right.
A normal kid does not set the house on fire. I thought that was really effective. I really did, because the defense has stated over and over again that the things that they went through, and when I say they, speaking of A.J. Armstrong and his parents, were that of just what happens with a normal 16-year-old.
Right.
You know, the lying about going over his girlfriend's house, sneaking out at night. You just can't leap from there to capital murder.
Yeah.
But when Ryan talked about those incidents, I thought that was pretty effective.
I thought that was pretty poignant too.
Absolutely.
Nonetheless, we have chosen a soundbite from his colleague, John Jordan, who picked up sort of the tail end on their rebuttal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he was the last one to speak in court, and let's hear a little bit of that.
I want to end this trial attempting to give a voice to Dawn. The evidence doesn't lie. He lies. You could see her saying that. The evidence doesn't lie. He lies. And you are the only people in our community who, with your verdict, can exonerate my innocent son by holding my guilty one accountable for killing me and the love of my life.
Well, I'll tell you what, it has been such a full day in terms of this trial number 3 for the A.J. Armstrong murder ordeal, you might call it, because we've been going through this now for 7 years, which was alluded to in court. We have a lot more to talk about, and we are going to continue to talk about those things on KPRC 2+. On TV, we want to send it back to you in the studio so you can get the other news of the day.
All right. Thank you so much, Joel. We're going to be watching this, and to Rilwan and our legal expert, thank you so much. We're going to be watching this, but right now we're going to talk about how hot it is.
Mm-hmm. We know.
And that's what they started. All right, we are talking about this is one of the big days, I would say, one of the biggest days in the future of A.J. Armstrong, the young man who is now 23 years old with a child of his own who's accused of killing his parents while they slept back in 2016. And today we heard closing arguments, at least during the morning. We just played a sound bite from John Jordan. I'd say he's the #1 position prosecutor for the state.
Lead
How do you
counsel.
guys think that he did he hit the right tone? Did he hit the right notes? Did he convince people that they have the evidence to link this young man to the murder?
I think it's going to be a toss-up, Joel. I really do. I think there were points made on the prosecution side and there were points made on the defense side. Either or. To me, this is one of those cases where I can truly understand why there's been 2 hung juries in the past. Because as soon as the prosecution gives you evidence that causes you to pause and say, well, darn, who else could it be? The defense comes right back and answers those questions. For example, the prosecution will say, well, who else could it be? It had to be AJ. He was there with the gun. You know, he was the only one awake in the house at the time. But then the defense comes back and says, well, if he was the one, how could it be not one piece of evidence ties him to the actual murder?
Reasonable point.
And so it is very reasonable. And as soon as the defense makes an argument, then they'll come back and say something different. Well, the cell phone says that he was moving about the house at the same time that the murders occurred.
Right.
And so then the defense will come back and say, well, wait a minute. The cell phone was active, but it doesn't say what AJ was actually doing. They have to prove to you AJ was the one who walked in that bedroom and pulled the trigger and killed those 2 individuals. And they haven't done that, and they haven't provided you evidence to suggest that. So it's just been going back and forth to the point where you truly understand how 2 jurors were not able to reach a decision.
What do you think, Rewind? Is that your take?
On Jordan's part with the cell phone of AJ, because they were using that during the closing argument. There's about an hour plus that was dedicated to during the trial of all of this, where they're showing the phone and then connecting it to the alarm itself, saying like the phone is not active or the screen isn't working here. Now it shows the motion sensor on the 2nd floor just went off. Oh, look, AJ's phone is down or whatnot, they're suggesting. There's a point that Jordan made in his closing. He said you could convict the defendant alone on the 911 call. Kind of going back to those blood specks on the back of the name tag. They're saying they didn't want to find that, but they found it. Then it was like, you can toss that out. We can just go ahead and look at this 911 call and that would do it enough there. Exactly. But we would hope to think that a 911 call wouldn't be enough evidence to convict someone.
I don't think the 911 call in itself gets him there.
No, I don't. And you know, one of the things I thought which was really fascinating to me that Rick DeToto did in his closing, when he talked about the GSR on the 22, and he picked that thing apart during his closing. He talked about the actual lab report that was entered into evidence said that some bullets that come from a 22 will leave GSR, but the expert said no bullets from a 22 will leave GSR. So there was a conflict in testimony on the side of the prosecution.
And he's pointing that out just to put a little hitch in the jurors' minds.
Of course, because then he said, well, if there is, because he was able to get the expert to say, yeah, there are some that would leave GSR. So then he says, I asked the expert, what bullets would actually leave evidence? And the expert said, I don't know. But which ones don't leave? Well, I don't know. Well, did you test the one?
Wait, we got to leave this right here because they are absolutely yelling at me on written paper to talk about the brother. Because the brother, we got to have time for this because the brother has sort of a nebulous role in all of this. It's unclear to me where he's going to fall in the minds of jurors. Certainly he's been, I would say, put forth by the defense team as an alternate suspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So were they successful in doing that?
The defense, I think, doubt. You just need someone to say, well, maybe it could have been him. And all the defense needs is one. And I just found it interesting, John Jordan, during his closing, he said that a family supports each other, they love each other, and he was kind of, someone, I think, no, it was Jordan Trask. Let me find that quote I wrote, because I was like, that was very interesting. He said they're sacrificing one son for the other.
Yes, one brother for the other is what
when he said that, I was like, oh, that was just super interesting. He said, this is disgusting. Are they so desperate they want to sacrifice one brother for another? That's what the prosecutor is saying.
He said a couple of interesting things, that he couldn't understand why the family was pulling for AJ and against Josh. I thought they said he went pretty far down that road in court. I thought
he did. And you know, the defense put Josh up as an alternate theory. And I think that some of the things that they learned about Josh would make you wonder, right? Because they said whoever, the psychologists both stated that whoever wrote that note was very angry. and that it had
This
religious...
is the note that was left at the scene right next to the murder weapon.
That I'm watching you.
I'm watching you.
And so what they learned, though, through the medical records of Josh was that he thought he was Satan at some point, and that he was Jesus's brother, and that he had delusions of hurting people and hurting himself. He also set a home on fire as well. He set the grandmother's house on fire.
More recently.
More recently. So here you have someone, the same things that they are complaining of AJ, as to how he could be or why he should be the suspect. You have even more evidence about Josh. And then they showed you a map of where Josh lived compared to where AJ Armstrong and the family lived, and how quickly he arrived on the scene.
He did.
And you know, and so they were talking about all of those things. He knows that home. He lived there. He would know where the gun is. And so they put him up as an alternate theory because it made sense to do so.
And there was a lot of debate, though, over when he may have sort of gone over the edge, or when he maybe was no longer mentally competent.
And that's prosecutors said this happened 6 months after the murder.
That's when the documentation starts,
see those
after the murder.
records that all of this happened after. Some of the records saying that it was triggered by the murders as trauma, but then we have defense saying that the family members, Ms. Kay Winston, Antonio Sr.'s mom, said that there was stuff that was off with Josh before the murders, but then the prosecutors would go, we don't have anything in evidence that says any of this happened before the murders. There's no medical treatments before the murders. So prosecutors hampering on that none of this happened until after the murder.
Correct. I don't think it should be lost. We haven't made a big deal of this point, but at some point, Josh, the brother, was talking to a doctor, and he said he witnessed his parents murdered.
He said that. So here you have a young man who has homicidal ideations, who think that he's Satan, who thinks that he has to save the world, and he says, I witnessed my parents murder.
And this is not the suspect.
This is not the suspect.
This is the suspect's brother.
But this is prosecutors also saying Josh, or whoever may have written that, said, because Josh was there when his father's body was carted out, taken to the hospital. So they're saying that's what he might have meant by witness. Who knows?
That's possible.
Yeah.
But that's what the prosecutors are arguing on that one.
They want us to talk about blood spatter, not to be confused with splatter.
Correct.
It's spatter without an L.
That's right.
Correct,
okay. To me, at least in the late innings of the trial, in the back and forth, it seemed to sort of pick up steam in terms of how important this was, how important the state's expert is, who you can believe, and what it all means. I mean, I was hearing about flecks of blood drying in midair. I couldn't quite follow everything in the closing. What do you guys make of all that?
I'll say I'm not biased, but I was in there for all of this, so I was like drawing those pictures, trying to understand what the expert Rossi at the top left there was saying about all of this.
From
blood.
Montgomery County.
Montgomery County. She's
supposedly a legend in her field.
Renowned, they said. That she has a lot of expertise in the matter. But what'd you take away?
So here's my deal on that, guys.
Okay.
I've been doing this 25 years, as I've said many times before. And I try to, when we're on this show, to not be biased on either side. But this is complete hogwash.
Oh, yeah?
It just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. There is no way that if someone is spraying blood out of their mouth and the assailant is right in front of them, they will only get one speck.
It's crazy.
One speck.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And not only it was just one speck, not one person who analyzed this evidence over 7 years found it?
Right.
Come on.
I thought it was really shaky.
That is too much.
Yeah.
It's too much of a leap, and I don't even think that it's something that should have been put into evidence because it just wasn't credible enough.
So do you think it was damaging to the prosecution that they included this little?
If it wasn't, it should have been.
Understood.
Because I believe in the integrity of evidence and the history that goes along with this evidence. You had people touching it without gloves. You had it examined in non-sterile environments. If it's not important that evidence is examined in sterile environments, then why do we sterilize the environments that evidence is actually examined in?
True.
So to come before this jury and say, even though any laboratory you go to, they're going to tell you they have different protocols and things that must take place in order to keep the integrity and the sterilization of that environment. To stand before a jury and say that that doesn't matter when labs will lose accreditations for not being sterile, that's disingenuous, and I just don't think that it was credible at all.
Can we take a break for 1 second while we still got a little airtime on 2 Plus? Because Anna, our executive producer, has just texted me and said that HPOU, that's the police officers union, has apparently responded to the federal lawsuit. And I'll just read a portion of it, and here it comes. This is from Doug Griffith. He's the president of HPOU. We believe that this is nothing more than a tactic that can be used to appeal should there be a conviction in the case. We believe that the jury has heard all of the evidence and will come to a proper and impartial decision. There's absolutely no proof in the allegations made by Mr. Armstrong's attorney, and we stand by the hard work of our dedicated homicide investigators. Obviously, he's compelled to say something because that federal lawsuit is really pointing the finger. I mean, it goes so far as to say that HPD planted evidence, allegedly.
Well, but you notice he said we stand by our investigators. Rossi is not his investigator.
And does that cover the DA's office?
Well,
They've
DA's office
been at
wasn't
loggerheads
named.
before, too.
The DA's office wasn't named. I thought that was
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true.
I noted that as well.
Yeah, it's the city, really, who is a party in this lawsuit. All right, that was a bit of breaking news, and now we're going to get back to the blood evidence and what they wanted to. What Jason really wants to do is we want to hear 2 sound bites from in court today. I believe this is from the prosecution and the defense on blood spatter.
And what do we know about the crime scene? We know that when Antonio Sr. was shot, he was facing away from his wife. We know that he had, from the EMT who testified, he had blood all in his nose area and coming out of his mouth. They had to go get a device to suction it out. And we can see the spatter on the bed. Those photos are in evidence. You can see. That is expiration blood that he is expiring from his mouth as he fights for his life. And we know that the person who did this put those pillows over his face. And he had to come close enough in contact to do that. Those blood spatters will dry in air. Charlie Rossi testified to that. They will dry in air and they will become like salt or gunshot residue. The defendant didn't have that sticker placed on him until 5 hours later. And during that time, who knows if more spatters fell off. But what we do know is when that sticker was placed on his chest, it preserved it. It time-stamped it. And there it stayed for 7 years until she went and looked at it.
Prosecutor's job is to seek justice, not to win. Their job is to seek justice, not to win. It's dangerous because that's how innocent people get convicted. It's dangerous to not believe or be sure that that evidence is accurate. Rossi comes in. We can't testify about the blast splatter. The bed's laid out. They say Senior is expiration. They came up with that story. She says the blood's coming out of his mouth. Remember this? It gets even worse. She said the blood coming out of Antonio Sr.'s mouth was drying in midair. Heard of such a thing? From 1.5 feet away, the blood that's being expired is dry. I think I used it once many times as a sign. Is drying in midair. Does that make any sense to you? So she's testifying because she knows she has to figure out how do we get the specks on the sticker without there being a corresponding blood stain. So we're going to come up with this theory. It's raining specks. It's raining flecks.
All right, we're going to let the blood spatter issue sit right there because we have to hit a couple of other things before we let you go for the evening. The jury is deliberating right now. We understand they're going to go until 7 o'clock this evening. They're going to be sequestered in a hotel, we believe, and then they're going to get started tomorrow around 8:39, somewhere in there. Now, we want to tackle the issue of jury questions. There's already been 2 at this point. What did they ask for so far? Do we know?
The first one was evidence. They wanted to see some piece of evidence, and the judge already said earlier in the day, if you want to see one piece of evidence, we're going to send you all of the evidence.
Right.
So that's what took a lot of time, and that's why everyone was kicked out of the courtroom, so they can send all of the evidence. I think the second question was breaking news, so it's unclear as of this point right now to us what that question was, but I
think it was they wanted some audio so they could listen to the recordings.
They wanted
speakers
so they could hear it.
Yeah.
Do you think the 911 tape is going to be an integral part of their decision making?
I think it will play a role, but it won't be a major factor. I mean, there are so many things that you can play into that. Who knows how a person is supposed to act? Is there a right way or wrong way when a 16-year-old is potentially faced with someone coming into their home and hearing gunshots? What is the right way to act? I mean, there's just no way to say that. But I think some jurors may put some stock in it, and then others will just dismiss it.
And they also have the interview with the interview AJ gave with detectives that night of, so they also could listen to that as well.
Oh, that's true, with those speakers.
I think they're going to play the difference in what he said in the 911 versus what he said in the actual interview. I think one of the things that they actually played up was that in the actual interview, he stated that he saw an assailant, whereas the 911 he did not.
Right.
So they're going to play that up. At the same token,
is that a discrepancy?
It depends. I mean, it's like if you're in the heat of the moment, right, and you're just trying to say, hey, get someone out here to help me, I may not give you play-by-play of what's going on.
True.
But then others may say, I mean, that's too big of an issue for you not to mention
that.
Exactly.
Let's talk about juror notes. In the last trial, that was 2022, there were 8 juror notes that I counted. And here are the things they asked. I kind of pulled some of these notes, and I wanted to see what they were asking about back then. And it looks like some of them were asking, they wanted to know a lot about the alarm information. That was one of the questions they had. What about the alarm information? Where are we on that? Did the expert with alarm.com, did he effectively serve the prosecution?
I would say there's this one day, I'll just go back, I kind of referenced it, where they used the alarm itself and then AJ's phone, the tracking of the AJ's phones there. They use the alarm to show that it works. It works. The day of, it worked. But
if you ask the prosecution.
And Chris Collins said that there were 77 errors from the alarm system
in 1 month
July alone.
The month of the actual killings, yes.
But then the prosecutors would say that day, everything worked fine. Kiara was the one who set the alarm. AJ turned off the alarm once he opened the door to police that night.
Right.
Once he and his sister ran out of the home.
Right.
I'm curious how that. I'm just curious, like, percentage-wise, what's going to play in the jurors' minds? Like, what are the important pieces of everything we've heard over the last, what is this, day 12?
Yes.
Over the last 12 days of testimony. I'm just wondering what they're going to key on. Are they keying on the brother? Are they keying on the alarm? Are they keying on the timeline of the text messages versus the infrared eye in the house and being able to track where everyone's moving? We have a SOT now. When I say SOT, I mean sound on tape from another juror. That's a juror from the 22. From the
previous trial. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's give a listen to that. This was what was in the mind of a juror last year.
I don't see them going to sleep not knowing that their home is secure. So to me, the house is secure, so I don't see there's no physical damage, of intruders, or it's just, the murder is still in the house. It was pretty obvious to me. And then I feel like the note was just a distraction to make you think it was from someone else.
Was there one piece of evidence that they were really hung up on, or was it just kind of a collection of different things?
Yes, they just kept going back to the alarm system and how there was a testimony on how it may have not been fully functioning. So that was their main focus on, like, how can we really rely on the alarm records if there was a testify that it wasn't really functioning fully. So that was their main focus.
All right, so moving forward, from this very point, we know that the very first thing to happen is that the jurors are going to stop deliberating at 7 o'clock.
Correct.
So we don't anticipate them reaching a verdict. I don't want to jinx it or say one way or the other, but they'd have to come up with it in short order in 20 minutes. Of course, I have seen in other cases where they said, we want to work a little longer, we think that we can reach a verdict.
Like we're close.
It's
We're
speculation.
close.
That's
Yeah.
a big old bus with a big old horn. right there.
Sometimes that happens. If the jurors feel like they're close to a verdict, then let's get to it. Let's work and see if we can knock this thing out
And I'm
tonight.
sure the judge would let them do
Oh,
that.
yeah, of
But there's
course
been
you
no
would.
indication they plan
No,
on
and
doing
I don't foresee that happening. There was too much evidence that they have to work through in order to get there. And I guarantee you that at the end of that trial, you're not going to have 12 people on the same side. Both sides put forth in a very effective case. And so I think you're going to have some folks for the defense and some folks for the prosecution. I don't see them working everyone to one side within 5 or 6 hours.
I understand that.
And we'll know in the past it's taken about 2 days during the last 2 trials, roughly 2 days for the jurors to come back with the hung juries.
And tomorrow's going to be a big day, not only because of deliberations, but we're going to see a little more fleshing out of this federal lawsuit where A.J.
Absolutely.
Armstrong and his team have basically alleged that the HPD, the Houston Police Department, planted evidence in this case, violated his civil rights, and I understand there is a press conference regarding that in front of the property room right over here on Washington, some like 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So of course we'll be
I think
part
it's
of that.
important to note, Joel, too, that it wasn't Chris Collins or Rick DeToto who filed this lawsuit.
No, it's separate.
Yeah, 2 separate lawyers.
That's true. Different
Yeah.
lawyers, different specialties. And that's going to wrap us up for this evening. We have a lot more to discuss tomorrow, and of course, we'll be back here as warranted. For now, the jury has the case, and they are deliberating in this, the 3rd murder trial for A.J. Armstrong. We'll see you back here, I think, tomorrow morning, if not soon.